Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Appreciate you taking the time. I know it's been crazy in your household, not just on the soccer field, with your move and everything going on. So I really do appreciate we sort of staying in touch and then finally being able to connect to talk. So.
I'm glad to be here. I apologize. I know you. I think I stood you up one day. I mean, it's been chaotic,
Yeah.
but I'm glad to make it happen.
The fortunate thing is that when I was younger and I was dating a lot, I was stood up plenty of times. So I'm really comfortable with that.
At least you were dating a lot. I don't know if I had that.
Okay, so I just have to start this off and ask you pretty simply. If you could tell by the jersey in the background, I'm a Barcelona fan. And to this day, one of the greatest betrayals in my life is when Luis Figo left Barcelona and went to Real Madrid. Is what you did from going from UMHB to Hardin-Simmons, is that akin to that in the soccer world?
The ultimate betrayal.
Yeah.
I think that there were a lot of questions, a lot of eyebrows raised. I do feel like most who know me understand, or they know that I played at Hardin-Simmons, and so they didn't see it as something just absolutely, backstabbing.
Yep.
But there. I mean, I'll say we threw some gasoline on the rivalry. There's no doubt about it.
I just hope you like your first real game when you guys face each
Yeah.
other. If you travel there, you don't like get a pig's head thrown at you like that famous, which I'll show. I gotta show. It's fantastic. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's funny. I'd heard like there is just this natural rivalry between the two, and I love
And
to
it's
hear
it's
that.
very. I mean, they're very similar schools, and most athletics and just about every team, the rivalry is Hardin-Simmons and UMHB at every program, because Mary Hardin-Baylor is going to be top of the table in just about every athletic program, and so is Hardin-Simmons, and so
Yeah.
you naturally kind of have that rivalry. It's not necessarily an ugly rivalry.
Yeah,
I've got
yeah, yeah,
nothing bad to say about Mary Hardin-Baylor at all. I love that place
yeah,
and love those people and love the program that I was a
yeah,
part of and love Ben Allen, and so there's a lot of good there. And I think, but I think they understand, and it'll be fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it is. By the way, I was very impressed with Ben when I
Yeah,
Coach Allen when I interviewed him. What a stand-up guy,
yeah, good dude.
and I think the program's in good
Yeah.
hands. It's pretty clear. He's got an idea, and okay. So aside from that little jaunt down painful lane, Barcelona history, maybe we could just start. For those who are watching, you were just named the head coach at Hardin-Simmons in January. Maybe you could just sort of walk us through what your soccer experience has been, and how did you end up, ultimately at Hardin-Simmons?
Well, so back in the old days, 1998 or 1995 to 99, I played here at Hardin-Simmons, and had an incredible experience as a player and a student here, and grew a lot as a knucklehead 18-year-old who knew nothing about
You too?
right, knew nothing about being a student athlete, and coming from a small town in North Texas. So it gave me a lot as a player and a person, and grew so much. And I didn't know I got to Hardin-Simmons thinking I was going to be or go to physical therapy school. Well, it took about 2 classes to realize you're not smart enough for that. So next thing, you got to coach. But anyway, so got in through going through all the coaching and getting myself prepared for life after college, and still even then didn't know what I was going to do, and I was fortunate enough to get a phone call from Mr. Rob Miller, the Converse coach. Now he was at University of the Cumberlands. It was Cumberland College back in the day in Kentucky. Great school, and and he went on to Anderson University in South Carolina. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to go be a graduate assistant for him for a little over a year, and then came back to Texas and started through the high school ranks, actually, at Abilene High School and back here, and married my wife here in Abilene. And then, I tell people all the time, I guess in 2006, it wasn't that hard to get a college coaching job. I think now it's very difficult to get a college coaching job.
Yeah.
And I was, really lucky and fortunate enough to jump into a program at Mary Hardin Baylor that just needed a little bit of attention, I guess you can say. And had an incredible 16-year coaching stint there, and just really loved it. Got out of coaching for about 8 months, all of 8 months, and
I noticed
took
that
about that long to realize that what I was missing. And so while I was in that, and we can talk about that more if you like, but later. But while I was in that world of athletic administration, I was watching Hardin-Simmons online play their quarterfinal. Is actually a quarterfinal loss in PKs, and I yell across the house, "Hardin-Simmons just lost." Shannon, my wife, and maybe one day I'll go back there and coach at the alma mater. And she told me I'm dumb, be quiet, and so she knew the obviously the rivalry and how that would be portrayed. And anyway, so just one thing after another, and not to be hyper spiritual, but I think the good Lord and just started carving out the ways for me to come back out west. And so here I am.
It's amazing how he does that, but have similar experiences. Like no other way to explain it as far as I'm concerned. But hey, so you've been around the game quite a bit. I mean, also just sort of across the country, right? Like you have Kentucky and at Anderson. Do you think players have gotten better?
Man, that's a great question. Yes, I say overall, the leagues, the players, top to bottom, there's a little more parity. I think it's closing the gap on some elite teams. Back in the day, I think you would have a team win 10 straight national championships. I won't name them on this podcast, but you've had those teams where they just absolutely run the table year in, year out, and it's a little bit less than that now. And back when we were playing, I will say one thing that I miss that I don't see quite as much is there's a level of grittiness that might not be quite as much. So, but I think the players overall are probably better soccer players, but maybe. You really got to get in the weeds to try to find that blue collar mentality that I think that certainly helps win. Yeah,
it's funny that you say that because I was at Simple Player number 3's practice last night, and afterwards I was talking to the coach who him and I go as far back as the day is the day is old. So we were just talking about that very idea that, and I think some of it is just like soccer's gotten really sanitized. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but right, like most clubs kind of all play the same. They all play on turf. Their soccer experience is pretty methodical. And we were talking, man, when we played, it was like somebody would call you and say, hey, game in somewhere, and you'd go and you'd play on a dirt field.
Yeah.
And you'd be like as content as can be. And it sort of helps create personality in you where you're like, I'll barrel through anything to win a game, right? Just because that's sort of the way you had to survive. If you wanted to get calls, again, that was sort of what you had to do. And we were kind of lamenting that. Like, these guys, if you put them on grass, even a nice grass field, there's a struggle there because they don't know how to anticipate a ball. It's slow, fast. Like, man, and it's true.
Yeah.
And see it with my kids.
Yeah, I think, sorry to cut you off. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's a brand, and I think the soccer purist. I'll be the first on this show right now to tell you I'm not a soccer purist. I'm a coach who coaches soccer. I love all athletics,
Yeah.
and for me, a lot of my soccer thinking is how do we go about the action of winning a game, right? And not necessarily.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's ugly, and sometimes it's really pretty. And I've played
Yeah.
soccer and I love the game, but
Yeah.
I'm not about a brand. In fact, I was watching U.S. Mexico last night and texting back and forth with some of my coaching friends, and why are we playing all the way back? We got the ball in the corner, and I would probably get all over one of my players doing that. Let's go and let's get in the attack and let's go forward toward the big white thing. And but it's there's a level. I mean, through youth soccer, and I get the idea of trying to build a better soccer player, but there's got to be a balance. But there's some branding there that I think these kids are being exposed to. And it's not all bad. It's just sanitary.
Well, it is true though, right? Like, look, and good teams find a way to win, and I'll say I'm closer probably to the purist in the soccer realm, and I become pretty hard coded in it, and I just but I always tell the guys during games there are ebbs and flows to the game. Like whether you want to or not, there will be ebbs and flows. There will be times when you're playing great, and you got to sort of capture that. And there are going to be times where nothing's working. And so you also have to understand when that's happening. But how do you respond to it? And I always say, work.
Yeah.
Right? Like you just keep going back to the grindstone and do what you can do to sort of recapture the high points. But I don't think kids are accustomed to that. And I think a lot of, anyhow, we could go down. I'm just talking youth soccer. Oh, my God. We'll be here for we'll be talking tomorrow.
That's exactly what, we just had, Mondays we have competition days. And it's only to bring out the competition in guys. And so we always, every competition day, there's a victim team, right? Who's just getting smoked, and nothing's going their way, and they got to figure out a way, and that's what I'm talking about, a work and blue collar mentality. Like you just got to work out of the slump.
So you have to deal with it and accept it, and I always say you have to realize it, because the first step is if you don't realize that you're playing bad or you're getting thumped, then you have a problem, right? But anyhow. We'll do another one of these, and we'll solve youth soccer. I always love those conversations, and then we could do MLS another time, pro rel and all that stuff, and then we'll deal with the national teams.
Sounds good.
I don't know, national. Yesterday was a little bit tough for me to swallow, but it was just again purposeless game. I think it was pretty obvious, but Could you talk about the American Southwest Conference? And I keep thinking there's some folks who are moving out of it.
Yes. What do you want me to talk about?
Okay. Yeah. Can you talk about can you just talk about the ASC, the competition, obviously coming from UMHB, and sort of what your thoughts are in terms of the level of competitiveness?
I mean, I've got history with the ASC, as a player, and I was
Mm-hmm.
Hardin-Simmons. We're NAI and transitioning to Division III, and
Mm-hmm.
so I've seen the ASC from the get go, and
Mm-hmm.
um, there are a couple teams transitioning out. I mean, Murray University is transitioning out to join the SCAC with
Mm-hmm.
Trinity and Southwestern, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, Shriner and TLU and those schools.
Mm-hmm.
And Stoll Ross in Alpine, Texas,
That's it.
is supposed to
Yeah.
be headed to NCAA Division II, and I think we find that out for sure this summer
Mm-hmm.
if they make that full transition. So um, that doesn't really impact I think the overall level of our conference. Yeah, I'm not saying that they're quality opponents. I still think you have the top 4 or 5 teams, 6 teams still in place here, and I think
Mm-hmm.
any one of our top 4 or 5, 6 teams can compete um, in a regional level. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, when I say national level, I've got to be real careful saying that we're going to compete in the national level. I like to think that our programs are strong enough to go give a good game, but to
Mm-hmm.
compete day in day out at the national level, top of the nation, we might be a little behind in that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not far off. I'll promise you that. And I think as a
Mm-hmm.
league overall, the ASC from when it was founded in '98 to what it is
Mm-hmm.
now is much stronger league.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, it was a one pony show, and now I think
Mm-hmm.
you've got a number of teams with a realistic chance of winning the ASC regular season, and then who knows what
Mm-hmm.
happens in the tournament. You've got
Yeah.
some quality opponents, and I think the other thing I'll say real quick is that teams are in our league are understanding um, the idea of putting a strength of schedule together to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
we are getting some regional but then national recognition
Mm-hmm.
that we're a good league and we're quality opponents,
Yeah.
and so
Well, can I ask? Because I've asked this question before. I have a particular interest these days, just in the West,
yeah,
sort of like,
yeah, heck yeah.
like just trying to understand the teams there, and I've been asking those, like, does especially as it relates to SOS, and then just sort of having a bigger presence nationally. I mean, is it tough from a scheduling perspective to do
Oh
that
yeah.
for you guys?
So I don't know if you know, but I've served on the national committee, NCAA national committee for the
Uh-huh.
last 3 years. I have one more year left. Regional committee before that,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I know there's a lot of understanding or trying to understand the West or Region 10
Mm-hmm.
and the complexities of scheduling when you where you are,
Oh,
you could
it's
drive a couple hours and get out of region.
yeah,
We just Texas alone, our conference alone, right? Just conference, we're traveling 8 hours for a conference game,
yeah.
6 hours, and you're still in Texas, and so that's
Everything's bigger
yeah.
in Texas. That's what I
I'll say
hear.
it's better. All right, it's better as well. Uh,
You know what? I'm in New Jersey, so I don't. I'm not going to disagree right now. So,
that's funny. But yeah, travel is difficult. But um, what we and what Mayor Hardin Baylor, what we were working to do, and here at Hardin Simmons is trying to not just play California schools or Pacific Northwest schools. We
hmm
want to get into the Pennsylvanias, get
yeah.
into Region One, Region Two, Region Three,
hmm
those schools, and try to make a statement. I don't know if that's the right word, but try to at
Yep.
least represent our league as a formidable opponent that
hmm
can compete if we get on the tournament stage, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's difficult, the California schools, for them to get out of the West region,
Oh my
they're
God.
flying
Yeah.
across country.
Yeah.
And, with budgets and, when we were going through COVID and restrictions, and now there were extra challenges to get out of region and really
Mm-hmm.
have a strong SOS that's comparable with Region 1. Region 1 is going to have
Yeah.
a 600 SOS, and Region 10
Yeah.
is only going to have a 530. And all I'd
Yeah.
say, so the National Committee, I think, I think we've decided as a committee to say, you know what, we can't treat the West region, Region 10, the same way we treat Region 1 because
Right.
of the differences in um, the league and trying to schedule and get.
Yeah.
It is really impressive with West schools
Yeah.
trying. There are a lot of schools now understanding the significance and impact in SOS, and so they're trying their
Yeah.
best to get out of
Yeah.
region or to build that schedule, and it's tough, but it can be done.
Yeah. Um, I was talking with Nick Mims, I
Yep.
think, and he mentioned like every couple years they're looking to make. Everyone talks about the European trips, right? And they're like every couple years instead of the four, because there's no restrictions as far as I'm aware. It's just
Just
budget.
domestically, yeah.
He's like, just yeah, domestic. He's like they're trying to every couple years to go out of region to somewhere. So I think, I forget who the opponents he said he's got lined up for the fall, or yeah, I thought it was the fall, or that they had just
Yep.
played to do that. And I'd been saying too for a while, like, you know, there's two things that I think now that I know you're on the national committee, I'll badger
Yeah,
you.
yeah, come on.
Well, yeah, like not that you were not used to that by now. Everybody's got an opinion. um, the two things I've said is if a team goes undefeated, there's got to be some way to recognize them because that's hard under any circumstance. And then the other thing I'd been saying, or I just sort of formulated along with that, was I just think there has to be a recognition for the West Region 10 that distance and travel and right it's a lot different and has to be recognized somehow as it relates to the strength of schedule. Your strength of schedule might be the best that you can do, and you're probably doing it under circumstances that up here, right? They don't know what an 8-hour trip is. No one here knows what an 8-hour trip is, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
realistically, I know one coach that said we don't go farther than 2 hours because they have and they hit. Think of all the teams in a 2-hour radius from New York City that you can play. It's just right, and then you don't have that. So
Well,
anyway,
I think to jump on that, and the win loss percentage is very, very
mm-hmm.
important. We
Yeah,
certainly recognize that. And but I could build a schedule where Hardin-Simmons University could be really close to undefeated, right? And so that's what we
well,
want to get away
sure,
from those
yeah,
schedules where it
yeah,
doesn't weigh so much, where if you're not trying to play people,
yeah,
and are you really tournament tested? Are you
right,
prepared
right,
for the NCAA tournament if you haven't played a tournament team? Does that
yeah,
make sense?
yeah. I think that's fair. That I'm not disagreeing. That is fair. Um, that is fair. I can understand that. I'm not going to
Sure.
disagree. I'm not going to disagree. See, we're
There you go. That's
80% in
right. There you
agreement.
go.
Yeah, that's fine. um, all right, let me. Hey, where do you? All right, so you're new, so this is going to be weird, but maybe it's sort of going to be similar because you mentioned how similar the schools are. But like, where do you think your recruiting region area is going to be? Or is it tends to be national at Hardin-Simmons, or is it pretty much all Texas?
I, I mean, we'll have to say Texas first, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
majority of Texas schools are predominantly Texas rosters.
Right.
Um, we being out in West Texas and trying to again trying to find what is our niche, who are we
Mm-hmm.
really going to be able to get the most, and been hitting the recruiting trail really hard over the last few weeks. But
Mm-hmm.
I thought Houston was untouchable for us, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
6 hours away. Right now, currently, we got four Houston guys committed just in the last couple of weeks. Um, Austin,
Wow.
yeah. So that
Okay.
that, that was been a pleasant surprise. West Texas is a massive area,
Yeah.
and I feel like we're one of the first stops for any West Texas kid coming into one of the big cities.
Mm-hmm.
So Abilene is more of a connection to a Dallas and Austin and a Houston
Mm-hmm.
for people for any player out west. So I
Mm-hmm.
really feel like we have an opportunity there. Obviously, a lot of great players in West Texas and Northwest Texas. So we like that. And but this recruiting class, and we have you can see on our roster we got a number of kids from Austin and Dallas.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
not Dallas. We're 2.5 hours from Dallas, which is basically the same as it was when I was at Mary Hardin Baylor in Belton,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're not too it's not a great distance. And Texas speaks it's not a great distance, and then Austin. So there's a hotbeds for players in all those areas in San Antonio um, but West Texas I think is going to be. I'm going to try to really tap into the West Texas talent and
Mm-hmm.
see what we can do there.
I like I s- Texas. I just again, I'm small mind, but I know it's a big state, but that's not a bad place to be if you're looking for soccer
Yeah,
players. I mean, all the experience that we have had traveling and teams that we played, I'm always astounded by the Texas teams because they have the technical and tactical know-how that I don't think I'll say up here, at least from a club soccer perspective, that we don't have. And I don't understand why or any of that, but I've always been
it's
impressed. I
it's
mean,
such it's
yeah,
such a big state, so it's really any
yeah,
any any sport, and you can go on any
yeah,
roster of any sport, any collegiate roster of any sport, and be like, oh, there's a Texas kid, there's a Texas kid. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
so big, and athletics are
yeah,
important here. So um, you're going to find a player, surely. I mean, I don't
yeah,
know how many kids in Texas playing soccer, but
yeah. Well, I will say, so, and I'm quite frankly, I'm glad you left UMHB just because I'm a University of Mount Union grad,
oh, there you
and we've had our dust ups and run-ins with
go.
Mary
Yeah,
Hardin Baylor in
yeah,
football. Um, there's Texas kids on that
yeah.
roster. Or they're used. I don't know if there is right now. I haven't checked in a while. And I think the recruiting class is a couple of kids from
There you
Texas,
go.
right?
Yeah,
Like, and I think especially nowadays, I think kids who are really intent on playing, like that is their main. I don't want to say main mission. The distances don't
yeah,
matter anymore,
yes, correct.
right? Right? It's just it doesn't matter anymore. Like kids will go, like I said, Texas, Florida. You find them in Ohio,
Yeah,
Michigan, all over the place, right?
exactly.
And up here, and so they just got to find the right
Yeah,
school. Like I said, that if their main intent is, I want to go to college to play, then I think that, like I said, distances don't matter. They'll deal with it, and as long as they get to
yeah.
play. So. Man, we've been going, huh? Like this has been
Great.
like I'm like this is fantastic. So can't how do I say this delicately? Was what did, like are were you brought on with a mission? Like did were you hired to hey, we want to put Hardin-Simmons on the map. And I didn't look at the history and I apologize.
No,
I should have. But like is it Is it suddenly Hardin-Simmons finds that there's a priority in athletics, not only in athletics, but to compete, be competitive on a national stage, and so, hey, let's bring in some new blood. I don't know the circumstances.
No,
I'm just
I'm
curious.
glad you asked that because that's I'm not sure I was brought in for that. Like that
Mm-hmm.
was no one said, "Hey, we're going to bring in Brad Bankhead. He's going to win us a national championship." I don't that wasn't said. But
But it's there.
um, but so the history of the program,
Mm-hmm.
Hardin-Simmons has a good tradition of winning here. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stepping into a situation I stepped in 2006 at Mary Baylor where they had not won.
Nothing. Yeah.
This program has been there. In 2009, reached Sweet 16. They've won 9 championships overall. So not I wouldn't say a dominant
Mm-hmm.
um, history, but has always been top 4 in our league every year.
Yeah.
And so I'm taking over a program, and what I tell these guys here, like over the last 5 years, they have not won a championship,
Mm-hmm.
conference championship, and
Mm-hmm.
they've won a regular season title, but the last 2 years they've lost in shootouts in the conference tournament, and so they've had some brutal losses. But they've always been a quality team, and I think the guys we have now is just changing the mindset of
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to just think about American Southwest Conference. That's pretty small
Yeah.
scope, right?
Yeah.
And being on the national committee has really been an eye-opening experience for me, and I recommend anyone who has the opportunity to get on the committee. But it really changes your mindset and your perspective as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
and opens your eyes to the national level. And I want these guys to understand, like as a program, we don't want to talk about American Southwest Conference championships. We want to talk about being on the national stage, right? And whether that means
Yeah.
winning a national title or just being in the national
Mm-hmm.
tournament
Yeah.
and making runs. I mean, it's not just about national title, but it's about changing our mindset to the national level and understanding like this is a whole lot bigger than the American Southwest Conference, and I think we have the players that can get us on the national stage currently right now. We had a really good weekend this past weekend. We played Lubbock Christian, who's a really good Division II
Mm-hmm.
program, and then West Texas A&M, which has been a top 10 D2 program for a number of
Mm-hmm.
years, and we won one and tied one, and so I think the guys have, oh man, we are pretty darn good, right? And just letting them have that sense of we can compete at the national level. You guys are good enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're flying up to Virginia Wesleyan to play Lynchburg, and
Oh, that's going to be a great
and
game right
we
there.
know what we're in for there. Obviously
Mm-hmm.
great opponents, and we talk
Yeah.
about trying to get on the national stage. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. That was one way
you've got to
right
play
there.
teams
That
that have been
game.
there,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
are quality programs. So changing that, but then also, to be honest, just changing. There's more to all this for Coach Bankhead and these players than just soccer. And
Mm-hmm.
we really want to grow and mentor young men. And I'm not saying Coach Hager before me was is an incredible friend of mine, and he was here for 20 years and successful. And but I want these guys to understand like this. It's not just about winning soccer games, and we want to produce
Mm-hmm.
high character. My saying, Mary Hardin
Yeah.
Baylor, that I continue to say here is a great husband, father,
Yeah.
boss. At the end of the day, and
Yeah.
so I think you can learn a lot through losing, right? But man, I want to
Yep.
spit a bunch of winners in the world. We want to win games and learn
Yeah.
what it takes to win. And we're
Yeah.
going to stumble forward here and there. We're going to stumble on our face, but we want to make sure that we produce a bunch of winners in the real world who also know how
Mm-hmm.
to be a great man. So
Yeah.
that's the mission here.
That. So I'll just say that sounds like a big culture aspect to what you're
Yep.
doing beyond right.
Yep.
is can I ask? And you're never close, and you're never done. I get all that, but like how close to that do you think it is? Like, are you does it feel like you got like this immense work to do to get them to understand that and to buy into that, or do you think they're receptive and they're like sponges, right? Some guys go into programs where the kids are just like, we want to be better. You name it all, right?
Yeah.
Like, we want it. And then some other guys go in and be like, it's hard to break down the barrier.
Man, that's a great question, and I will brag on these dudes. You talk about coming over and coming from a program that these players, I walk into my first meeting, and these 28 players sitting in this meeting room, all they knew was the enemy's coming. Yeah, we were told to hate this guy, right? Yeah, they might as well booed me that first meeting. And so as soon as I got that first meeting, I was so nervous just to get that first meeting out of the way. But these guys, you talk about being a sponge. They work and they want to be great. And
that's awesome.
And I think for me, in this past weekend, I didn't know going into the games this weekend with Lubbock Christian and West Texas A&M. I really thought, man, we might get it handed to us, and that would be really bad for our mentality and really trying to make that culture shift. But these, obviously, we did well, and that helps. But their workload on the field and their belief in themselves and each other, we got a great group of leaders, and so I don't. They recognize, number one, they recognize there needs to be a little bit of a shift in emotional control and mentality and those types of things, and they want to be better there, and they want to be a great program, and they're willing to. I'm coaching it a little bit different too. So they're soaking it in and understanding, or they believe in what I'm saying, and so I'm certainly pumped. I'm really, really excited about this group and this program that they are soaking it in. I've got so far no resistance.
Yeah, that's great, right? Like, I love that you say that these guys want to be great, right? Like that, because again, and I just go back to the culture comment I made. Like, it sounds like that's what you want, and it just, right? Like, so long as that's the objective, right? Like, if you're only climbing 8,000 foot peaks, you're never going to climb Mount Everest, right? Like 25 or 28,000, right? And like, if you're just looking at your conference and that is the pinnacle, you're never going to expand beyond that. And you're right. There are teams. Conference is critical. Conference is a big deal. They put a lot of emphasis on it, but they're not looking at the conference. Right? They're sort of, their mindset is, our objective is to get into the tournament. And so when we get into the tournament, what do we do? And how do we get forward in there? Because, and I think that's why I always differentiate between the good teams and the great teams. The great teams are looking beyond, right? They're just, their vision is beyond. They understand the day-to-day work they have to do, including all the games. But their vision is like, we aspire to more.
Not to get back into the scheduling, but you can look at those teams' schedules and see what they're looking for.
Correct. Absolutely. That 100%. And I go back, right? I'm a big fan of Messiah, right? And like, just for a whole host of reasons, right? And their attitude is, right, iron sharpens iron. So what are we going to do? We are going to schedule some of the toughest possible games that we can. I mean, they opened their season last year going down to Washington and Lee. Who opens up, right? You know, like, hey, number 2, 3, 4 against 2, 3, 4, right? Like, teams don't do that, right? They sort of edge into the season a little bit. Game 5 and 6 gets to be tough, and then they go into their conference. But that's the sort of thing. You're right. That I agree with. Like, those teams and all the NESCACs and teams around here, they're all primed for doing that. I think that's a big deal. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, and I think that just goes to the vision of where their thinking is. Conferences and all that stuff. You got to do the day to day. But our aspiration, our goal is to achieve further than what just the conference brings.
Exactly.
So, wow, we're getting heavy.
Love it. Talk all day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It intrigues me, right? And it's funny because I was talking to simple player number 2, maybe. I can't remember. About he was asking. We were goofing. I always goof around. I'm a YouTube influencer. I got whatever. I just goofing around, totally and I had said to him, I was like, you know what interests me more, the soccer doesn't so much interest me, right? Like the X's and O's, I understand it and I watch it and I know what I like, I know what I don't like, but that part doesn't really intrigue me, especially in the college setting. What intrigues me is all the other stuff that goes around and how players get bought in.
Yeah.
And I always, my attitude has always been like, you don't, and you have to, but almost like wins and losses are not what we're, again, what's our aspiration. If it's just wins and losses, we're going to lose out on a whole bunch of other stuff. And I think, in my thinking, wins and losses will come regardless. How do you win in everything else?
Yeah.
And anyway.
Yep.
Okay, so you've been on the job for 3 months. 3 months?
Yeah, roughly
3 months.
3 months. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In that time, you've moved. I mean, it's been nothing short of chaos. But aside, like, what was your first training session like for the spring?
It was incredible. It'd been 8 months since I had run a session, and I thought I was done coaching, right? So I left coaching, got into athletic administration. I really thought that I needed, maybe it's a midlife crisis at 45 years old, but I thought I don't know if I want to kick a soccer ball around the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And
Get a convertible next time.
yeah, for example. And I thought maybe I was losing energy to be a coach, right? And I just kind of didn't know if I had the energy, and I was not really doing my program justice if I don't have the energy to keep going.
Right.
And so that 8 month off was re-energized me. And so to run a session almost a year later, in the spring, we started our spring March 27th, so it was really almost a year since I had been coaching. And we opened it up. It was a Monday, so every Monday is a competition day for me. And I left. I walked off the field, and I'm immediately texting my wife, giving her an update. It was incredible to be back on the field and coaching 18 to 22-year-old dudes again, and the energy that those guys bring. And I think now, for an old soul of like myself, of having some young blood and some young energy, man, it just it was great for me. And I also coming into a new program where we talked about, are they going to be sponges or are they going to be, pushing back? And it was an incredible first practice. I think they enjoyed it, and I think ever since, we haven't had as a coach, you're going to have those practices where you walk off the field and you're just like, nothing worked. It was a terribly, poorly planned session, or the player just thought something wasn't right, and then the next day will be an incredible day, and the next, whatever. But I just haven't had one of those yet, and I want to be out in the field, and I'll be the first to tell you, and people know me. I'm not I've already said this. I'm not a soccer guy, and I love coaching and I love soccer, and I know it enough, I think, to coach well enough. But so I'm not just gobbled up with soccer all the time. I'm not watching soccer all the time. I'd rather watch PGA Tour than some soccer games, right? So it's not that I just love soccer that much. I just can't. I love to be on the field 24/7. That's really not me. But the sessions have been great. The players have been phenomenal to coach, and I've really, really found some nice energy to get going again. But that first session was fantastic.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and I'll let you get on with your day. But like how's recruiting been going?
It was a slow start to it. There hasn't been when I got here. I think my database was just a few players. And by that time, you'd hope to have, 100 or 200 in the
Yeah.
database. We didn't have many. We didn't have much of a database. And so that was a challenge. We had two players that I think had pretty much, gave their verbal commitment or were really close to giving their verbal commitment. And this was in late January. And normally I like to be done, 1st of March, middle of March kind of thing, was always my goal. Obviously, you're always going to have kids trickle in later in the spring or in the summer, but we it has really, really picked up. We have had every day. We've had at least 2 visits just about every day for the last couple of weeks, and so I'm wore out by on-campus official visits right now, but our class is growing, and not only we're not looking for numbers. We want some quality players to join in on this. So it's not necessarily, I'm not looking to build a reserve team. I don't have a numbers quota I've got to meet. So we feel like we're bringing in some really good talent. So I was discouraged before, and now sitting here on April 20th, I'm really encouraged by our class and our roster for the fall.
Is it a bigger deal to you, especially as you're starting now, to make sure that you're bringing in the right kid, not so much the right player? Ideally, you want both. Don't get me wrong, but
if a kid can't fit in, so my recruiting spiel. I mean, I'll tell a kid, we live in a transfer portal world, right? And where you can transfer portal yourself out of responsibilities. You can transfer portal yourself out of. I'm just using that term.
That's a good point.
I say all the time, like my wife would love to transfer portal me out every once in a while, right? And there are times when my 16-year-old daughter,
wants to transport portal you off the planet.
Or I might like to transfer portal her out, right? But we can't. We can. We have that option.
Yeah,
we certainly can, but I sure hope we don't.
It's a choice.
I sure hope we don't. And so, man, if a kid is coming here as a stepping stone, they don't want to get an education at Hardin-Simmons. They don't want to fit into the social setting. They're not okay with faith-based school. Now, we don't just recruit Christian kids, but you have to understand what Hardin-Simmons is about. And I'm going to talk about my faith, and you're going to hear it around campus. But if you can't thrive in that environment as a person, if it's just soccer, then we'll tell them no, man. I mean, we love you on the visit. We think you're a heck of a player, but if you're not truly bought into the overall experience, then you're not going to give us what we want anyway. And a disciplined player off the field, and a focused and a hard worker off the field in the classroom, socially, he's going to be that same kid on the field that we can really use. And so it's the culture we're living in, where whether it be grass is always greener, or if I go through something challenging, I'm out of here. I'm not saying that we will never have a kid transfer out of Hardin-Simmons after I recruit them, but I like to catch them in the recruiting process so that they get here. I'm not hiding anything in the recruiting visit. You know who I am. You know what this school's about, the good, bad, and the ugly. And if you want to be a part of that, come on, and we're going to give you a great experience.
Yeah. That's funny that you said that, because I am sure there are very legitimate reasons why kids will do that, like transfer portal themselves out. I think there's lots of legitimate reasons. I also think there's kids who, the first sign of of difficulty, they just think that they're going to find a better
Yeah.
place, which I hate to say it. Usually, what led you to those difficulties is probably about you, right? Like I always look at it. It's if I have a problem or there's a difficulty, it's probably about me, and what I'm doing wrong, right? Whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of kids don't. They're like, yeah, I don't have to deal with it. I'll just go somewhere else until I find that place that difficulty is no longer there.
One thing we would hear is it's your style. Well, no, I mean work. You're gonna have to work wherever you go, and
Yeah.
and they find out, well, shoot, man, maybe it is me. It's not the style.
Yeah.
Maybe it was me. And
Yeah,
like you said,
yeah.
there's legitimate reasons, but we just hope that the overall culture and mindset is not.
Yeah.
We just want to transfer around and look for a better place, and
Yeah.
I think that guys are gonna graduate out of this program that again are great husbands, fathers, bosses, and I
Yeah.
sure hope that they're not transfer portaling out of those responsibilities when they're 40 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? How long do you still have practices?
We've
Do you
got
still practice?
we started a little later. We have one more week. We have practice today, and the next week we have a couple of practices, and then we have our alumni game next Saturday.
Did you play? Did you have a scrimmage or no?
Yeah, we played.
Or is that the alumni
No,
game?
we played the scrimmages. The scrimmages,
Oh yeah, that you
I
mentioned.
love
Yeah,
Christian
yeah,
in West
yeah.
Texas.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Coach. This was fantastic. I really do appreciate that we were able to sort of come together at some point. This is great. Seriously, one of the best conversations I had, and
Well, absolutely one of the best. No problem.
yeah, Hardin-Simmons, everyone. If you got to go to Hardin-Simmons. No, it was like again, it wasn't about soccer in my mind. It was just a great conversation with a great coach. So
I appreciate that.
So I will be watching the eye in the sky of SimpleCoach will be watching you this fall.
Awesome.
Super high expectations.
Heck yeah.
Fully expect a national
Heck yeah.
championship trophy. Yeah. No pressure. But you know what? Hopefully we can connect maybe just before your first games or whatever, if you have a window of time, and we could just do an overview of sort of what you're thinking for the fall. That would be great. I'd ask you questions about the fall, but I have a feeling that you're still just sort of processing what's going on there. So I'll spare you that. But thank you very much. Really do appreciate it.
Enjoy the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Hang on. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.